Welcome to These Aren't Our Ideas. In this first season, we want to focus on waking up. And I don't mean the pop spirituality sense, or the Instagram quote sense. I'm talking about waking up as in when you start realizing that the world is bigger, stranger, more complex, and often more beautiful than the version you inherited. Waking up isn't just about mystical experience, it's about increasing your capacity to see reality more clearly. And once you see clearly, you can't unsee it. And you don't want to. Waking up also has a very practical meaning. It's what happens when you get new, more objective information. Information that isn't filtered through what you want to be true, or what you need to be true, but what actually is true, or at least closer to it. It's like the ability to look at something directly without the lens of fear, desire, ideology, or tribal loyalty. Ignorance isn't just not knowing, it's misseeing. It's looking at the world through all the stories you've collected and mistaking those stories for reality. And honestly, that's what this first season of the podcast is all about. A lot of us grew up with stories, religious stories, political stories, personal stories that shaped how we understood the world. They shaped what we believed about God, meaning, morality, truth, even our own identity. And for many of us, those stories worked until they didn't. Something cracks. A question we can't unask. A contradiction we can't ignore. A piece of history or scholarship or psychology that opens a door we didn't expect. And suddenly we're seeing things from a wider angle. That's the process of waking up. But waking up isn't just liberation. When the map you've been using your whole life stops matching the territory, where do you go? Who do you trust? How do you evaluate information? How do you know what's legitimate and what's just ideology wearing a lab coat? That's one of the goals of this show, to explore the tools, intellectual, psychological, historical, philosophical, so that you can see things more clearly. To investigate beliefs with curiosity rather than fear. To look at scholarship that challenges old assumptions. So this first episode is really the beginning of that journey. We're starting with our story. It's a journey from certainty to more clarity, from comforting stories to deeper understanding, from sleepwalking through inherited beliefs to waking up into a life that's actually yours. Welcome to These Aren't Our Ideas. My name is Jake, and my co-host is Josh. We want to start the first episode of These Aren't Our Ideas, not with ideas or philosophy or deconstruction or theology, but with our story, with our testimonies. You know, when we were growing up, they talked a lot about our testimony, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
We were encouraged to develop our own testimony. We listened to other people's testimonies, and you know, the better the testimony, the cooler you were, and the more it showed like God's involvement in your life and the transition of your life.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us what a testimony is?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you about a testimony, but real quick, having to tell your testimony, that was a quite stressful, almost traumatic experience, because do you remember being called up in front of church, like,
yeah,
just spontaneously, hey,
come
Josh, come share your testimony? And it's just a terrifying thing, because now you're standing in front of a congregation and you got to tell a story about how you came to Jesus.
There's multiple aspects to it. One is you want to be entertaining, but two, you want to like dig in and show God's involvement, and you got to have a great, you know, ending, and you got to encourage the body of people.
Yeah, you got to convince them also that it's a real testimony, that you truly were changed. And so
they're waiting for that moment, like, did he really do it?
Yeah, you almost felt like it was a time for everyone to judge your testimony. Like, is this a real Christian, or is this, you know, someone that
looking for attention? And
real quick, I guess, yeah. But I should say, what is a testimony? It's basically the story of how you became what we would call saved. And so this has a couple elements to it. First of all, of course, it was weird for us growing up in this environment because we were always quote unquote Christian because we were believers in the Bible and Jesus Christ. But despite being born into it, we still had to have this moment in time where we became a true Christian. And that was the moment where the first element is we recognized we were sinful. We had to confess that sin to God in a prayer. And in that prayer, we would then ask, God to save us from our sin and confess that we trust in Jesus' sacrifice when he died on the cross, that would be his death would be satisfy God's wrath to save us. And so that was our moment of salvation when we go from a person who was destined for hell, even though we were born into the church and go to church every day, we were someone destined for hell. But that moment of salvation, we would have been what we would call born again and become a child of God, a true believer, a true Christian. So our testimony was centered on the events that led up to that moment and how we got to that point.
Mm-hmm. When you're given a worldview from infancy, you don't arrive at that worldview by accident. You inherit it. You breathe it. You swim in it. And that's long before you even have a chance to evaluate it.
Yeah. It's funny because we talk about having faith, but we never had faith. We were born into it. We like you said, we were immersed in it. You could say we were indoctrinated in it, but ultimately we really couldn't have that moment of salvation because we were all like, did you ever not believe in Jesus and his death on the cross?
Right.
We always believed that.
Right. Then let's get into that by talking about the place that we grew up. So you would probably call it pretty directly a cult. Now that you've been out a while, you've been gone a while, you'd say definitely it fits the category of a cult. Right.
Well, you think about a cult, you think about there's like the ultimate leader that nobody questions. We had that.
Check.
We were a little bit, or more than a little bit, we were strongly isolated from, not physically, we were in town, we lived in, just a normal city, but our lifestyle, we were isolated. Our friendships were isolated. Our families were isolated. We didn't go to a normal school. Our school was a volunteer-based system that was taught and run by the leaders of the church and their wives. Like, we were truly isolated socially from the world. We were told what we could and could not do. We had, for example, remember we had the church covenant where we weren't allowed to drink alcohol. We weren't allowed to watch certain movies. We would get kicked out of school if they found out we watched an R-rated movie, for example.
Yeah.
So there was a level of control over our lifestyle and who we were with.
Cults also have a secret message that very few, if not no one else, truly knows. And we definitely had some of that happening. Like there was some deep cut theologies that we were taught that, we had this special message and we were an even more important part of the bride of Christ. It would talk about.
Yeah, we were set aside above other Christians. We acknowledged there were other Christians out there, but they were on another level. They were below us. We were this really special group of people. But yeah, I would say we were born into a religious cult. And the other thing that makes me think of it as a cult is if you were to leave, you would be publicly disparaged. You would be in front of the congregation for years. In front of the congregation, this ultimate head, this leader, would publicly talk about how you walked away from God, how you were deceived, how you were a wolf, whatever. Essentially, you walked away and gave up, the most precious thing, and that, your life is basically, you were an unfaithful person.
Yeah.
Walked away from God. And so you were publicly,
that happened to my family. I had family that was basically kicked out and then ostracized talked negatively about from the pulpit for years. And I would sit there and listen for like 15 minutes and I would walk out, and that happened for years.
I mean, I remember that. I remember
You remember
hearing
that?
like about your aunt, being removed when we were in 7th or 8th grade, I think. And
Yep.
for the next 20 years, we heard about that fairly regularly. Like it was,
Those that
among
leave.
others, I think.
I'm the shepherd. I'm the shepherd.
Yes, God put me in charge. I am ordained by God. You cannot question me. And yeah.
Another part of being a cult is like very apocalyptic type thoughts a lot of times too. Like this future thing that we're preparing for, that we're going to be in, we're going to be saved from this thing, which broadly goes across to Christianity. But I'm just saying, like, that's another aspect of the cult.
Yeah. And I think we fit all those descriptors or descriptions of a cult. So for me, this is what we were. We were born into it. I mean, it was a remarkable cult, in my opinion. Like our parents, they were what? College age kids, basically, that separated themselves. They physically built a building.
They got saved.
Twice.
They got changed. I mean, there was this beautiful aspect to these boomers who were finding through the Jesus movement in the 70s.
Yeah.
They were being transformed. They were being saved from who they were, and from the emptiness and sorrow of the world, and finding a new life in Christ and this new group that they could be a part of, that they could go through life together and be renewed and saved and cleansed by, there's a beauty to it for sure.
Yeah. It was a special, I mean, there were a lot of problems, but it was kind of a special childhood for us, I think. Like, we literally built the buildings we went to church and school in. Even when I was in 7th grade, when they add on the gymnasium, like I was there every day all summer building locker rooms. Our parents built that church.
They built the church, then they've built a school building, and then a small little gym,
they gave their
and then more school, building. Also that we could, be separated from the world and learn from these leaders and
they did it willingly, cheerfully.
Beautiful, wonderful.
They were inspired. It was kind of a magical time, I would say. They lived it, and they breathed their faith.
Yeah.
The phrase we would say is they didn't just talk the talk. They walked it. They truly lived what they believed was the as a follower of Jesus Christ.
So tell me about like when you're younger than 10. So,
Yeah, well, between church and school, I mean, school and church were essentially one and the same. It was the same building, same classrooms, same teachers, often our parents. Me personally, my home was adjacent to the church and schools, so there wasn't really a physical boundary between what was our school and our church and my home. My backyard was literally the playground. So, and my dad was one of the assistant pastors, so he preached every Sunday morning and the first service. And so for me, I mean, I loved it. I loved being so close to it. And I admired, particularly because of my father, I don't know where it came from, but I had a deep desire to please my father in all that I did. And so I admired him as a preacher. I admired him as a student, I would say, of the Bible. So he would read the Bible and study it every day. And I kind of tried to follow in that example. And, as a kid, you're just learning the basics. You're learning about heaven and hell and stuff like that. But I think it meant more to me for some reason. And perhaps it was because I saw my dad kind of as one of the leaders of it. And so it definitely meant a lot to me as a kid.
He was a man of God, and you were told to be a man of God. And so here was an example.
Yeah. And we had people, I mean, because we were right next to the church, we had people over every day from the church in our house. Like there was no separation for me. It was, yeah, they were all one and the same.
And that's so interesting, like literally your backyard's property, the next step over from your property, which had no fence, like you said, literally no physical separation, was the backyard of the church.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
And there was multiple people on that street. 10 families on that street, on that cul-de-sac that was adjacent to the church property.
Yeah, so we truly we didn't have, we had neighbors that weren't believers, but we didn't associate them.
No, we didn't.
I had a bunch of neighbors a bunch of my neighbors were actual members of the church and school as well. My best friends growing up were 2 houses down from mine. So we just ran around the playground and the church property. I had a master key to the building, so I could go wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted, throughout the building. I did that all summer long. I would do that all school year as well. You know, the foundational things that we learned or were indoctrinated in, at least that's how I view it. You know, we learned early on sin was bad. And it's not just bad, it will destroy your life. You remember that there was that one preacher who would say sin will take you farther than you want to go, cost you more than you want to pay, and keep you longer than you want to stay. Keep you longer than you want to stay.
And there's some truth to it, you know? It's like...
But what was sin? Like in my mind, sin was, if I'm not here, if I'm around, if I go hang out with non-Christians, I'm going to be in drugs and I'm going to be in jail. And these people are, thieves and murderers and Satanists. And that's what I thought the world was. I had no concept of just a normal living person contributing to society.
Yeah.
If you weren't in the church, you were...
It's a black and white particular viewpoint.
And not only was it black and white, but we were taught that these people, these non-believers, they're out to destroy us. They want to destroy our lives. They're going to trick you. They hate God. They despise God. They want to trick you and deceive you so that you will go to hell. That was half of it. The other half obviously was Jesus loves us, We sang songs all the time about how much Jesus loved us and he was good to us. How we're like the lambs, that Jesus is our shepherd and he's watching out for us and he's protecting us from the dangers and the evils of the world.
Yeah.
But that only would work for us if we accepted Jesus, if we had our, we're talking about testimonies, if we had our moment where we prayed to Jesus, confessed our sins, and asked him to save us.
And it only works for us because we happen to be in the right place at the right time. We're surrounded by people who...
Yeah, and so we were surrounded by that. Our friends in church, would get saved. We would have, the discipleship conference or some special speaker, and then... a friend would go forward and pray and get saved and get baptized. And then it'd be like, oh, I want to get baptized and I want to get saved. And so it was just doing what we were raised to do. There was nothing special about it.
Well, let me tell you my salvation experience. When I was 6 years old, July 14th, 1990, I'm 6 years old. So if that tells you how old I am, 41 now. My mom kept me home from church. And through a lot of prayer and preparation, had this booklet that you would use to lead your child to salvation. And I remember sitting down with her on the couch. It was just me and her that evening. Like I said, I think my mom kept me home from church in order to do this so that we would have this quiet time. She presented the message to me, which I already, we already know, even though we're 6 years old, 5 years old, we already know what it is, but we're, we need that one moment where we do the thing. Well, do you remember the image of, there's a flat land with a valley between it, and we are on one side of that valley, and God is on the other side of the valley. And we, on this side of the valley, are broken and sinful and bad and separated from God. And the only way to get over to God is through the cross, right? There's this cross that is between the two. And down in the valley is hell, sin, like just destruction. And so she walked me through it very beautifully. It was a beautiful moment, and she loved me, and that's why she did this. And told me how bad I was, and how according to the narrative, and that I needed to ask Jesus into my heart. And I did that. And you know what? It was such an incredible experience. I felt it. I felt saved, forgiven of my sin. I felt forgiven of my sin. And when it was over, I wanted to tell everyone. So it was like I still think back on that experience because it was so like wild. Even as a 6-year-old, I'm 6 years old. What sin was I doing, first of all, that I needed forgiveness right away? Growing up in this perfect Christian cult, not perfect, really was not perfect, actually, which we don't even have to get into all that. But, I'm still like not good enough as a 6-year-old. And as a 6-year-old, I can now be accepted into heaven if I confess my sins, ask the Lord into my heart. I don't know, fill in the blank. You trust, you have faith, you believe, you say, I repent, you do this thing. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to tell all my friends, and I did. I went to school or whatever. When I saw them next at church, I like, have you actually done the thing? Have you gotten saved? And a lot of them hadn't. Why? Because we're 6 years old.
That's remarkable to me because, and we can get into this a little bit later, but my salvation experience, my second one, and we should talk a little bit about how probably a lot of us had multiple rounds of this.
Yeah.
Because we're still terrified that we didn't quite pray correctly, and so we might still be going to hell. Well, my second round, I was 11 when I had this experience, and I felt so much joy and peace, and I felt that same elation that you described. But I also felt shame, and I was embarrassed because I was 11, and I was doing it for a second time. Yeah. And it's like I told everyone that I'd always told people I was saved when I was 5.
Right.
So now I'm getting saved again at 11. I was embarrassed by that. I never told anyone until I was probably a teenager. I was probably 14, 15, and my dad was like challenging me about whether or not I truly was saved. And I said, well, I was 11. And he's like, wow, I didn't know that. I never heard this story. Anyways, it's quite a contrast to like your desire to tell everyone. I never felt that. And I felt a fear to tell people.
Oh, right. Because you were so old. And
because I was so old.
Your friends were already saved, and you should have been saved a long time ago, bro.
Exactly.
You didn't do it right. And you're so smart. Why didn't you do it correctly the first time? All that feeling.
That, and I had already told people I had been saved since I was 5. And so to admit that I was wrong about that it caused me embarrassment. So I never told anyone. But in a way, my entire believing time, when I was a believer up till my late 20s, I viewed that experience at 11 as my true point of salvation. And I believed that was when I was saved, because I did have that experience you described where you feel the elation and the joy and the excitement by it. And that was the only time I ever felt that. And so to me, that was the sign, rather than trusting in the work of Jesus, I was trusting in this feeling that I had that made me believe I was truly saved.
So you basically went on doing what you normally would have done anyway. You just kind of carried on as if nothing happened.
I had a secret salvation.
Secret salvation. Did you get baptized again? Because I got baptized. So we should talk a little bit about the fear, because it was so focused on God's grace and et cetera, on the Jesus thing, that its opposite end was this fear of hell. Like, if you died tonight, Josh, are you 100% sure that you would go to heaven?
Yeah, that is that's a hard question to ask kids, because like if you're not going to heaven, where are you going? You're going to hell, which was eternal fire with the devil, demons, and evil people, like eternal torment. And so it's just hard when you ask a kid, are you 100% certain if you die tonight you would go to heaven? Then all of a sudden you're like, well, what if I didn't quite say that prayer correctly? What if I didn't confess my sins fully? What if I'm not truly sorry enough, Maybe I didn't quite totally trust Jesus.
Exactly, right. They were always really re-explaining and deeper explaining the concepts of trust, belief, faith, what the differences were, what repentance is. So you had to hold all those things correctly in your brain and then say the prayer while holding trust properly and faith properly and belief properly and repentance properly in order to get the salvation quote experience.
And think about this, like where does that come from? Like, why did they think we needed to have this prayer and this moment of salvation? Like, was it not enough to be sorry for your sins and be repentant of your sins and be trusting Jesus ongoing?
And just doing the Christian thing.
It was weird that it was a moment. Yeah, it's like, there is no moment where it happens. Like the Bible, I don't think ever describes it as this moment where you say this magic prayer, but that's what it was taught to us as. And that was a problem.
It's the result of the Billy Graham style evangelical movement of the 20th, late 20th century. But so, okay, we're moving into our young teenage years. And so we're a year apart. Though we grew up in the same environment, we were a year apart, which kind of made a difference. A lot of times, you had different friends than I did. But when I was 12 and 13, you must have been, 14. We started playing music together. We started playing Christian. We were in a Christian band.
Christian music. Yeah,
Christian music. We would write songs, Christian songs.
We'd write songs
about,
and then we'd play them at church.
Yeah, we would write songs. A lot of times, the themes were like coming back to God. I'm sorry, God, that I was this way, that I behaved this way. And you know what, God, I'm coming back to you. And that's what this song is about. Take me back into your arms. Let me feel that love from you again. But we wrote all kinds of Christian songs. A lot of them also were about judgment of other people. Like, I wish you would do better. I wish you would.
Yes.
I wish you'd come back.
You're falling away. Come back. It's like, to the Lord. You don't have joy in your life.
Yeah.
You need Jesus. Those were, because that was the message it was constantly judgment. All the time.
We were constantly judging people. So we wrote songs. We played them for our church. We played them for other churches. We played them for our youth groups. Oh, not so much our songs in youth group. We would lead worship for youth group.
Yeah. And just real quick, you made the point. I just want to say, we were constantly judging others, but we thought we were ministering. Like we thought we were making a difference. We were trying to reach people for God, but really we're just, judging them. But sorry to, just wanted to throw that in, because the heart behind it wasn't like I'm better than you. It was you need Jesus, and I'm trying to influence you to him.
So Sundays after church, we would eat lunch in some way, some form or fashion, and then we would have practice at church from like 2 or 3 till when the night church started at 6. So we would, we loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah. We were developing our music and everything like that, but just, the beauty of music and being creative, and there was no one there telling us what to do or how to do it. So it was our own kind of creative endeavor, which was nice. But so around that time, 14, 15, 16, I started teaching Sunday school. I taught 1st and 2nd grade, and you taught 3rd and 4th grade.
With your brother.
With my brother, yeah. So we were a classroom apart. Again, we're a lot of times we were always like 1 degree away from each other,
Yeah.
But yeah, I taught Sunday school my entire teen years. In fact, I started helping a girl when I was 13 teach first and second grade, and she quit after a few months. And so it was just me and with the first and second grade class. There was maybe 15 kids. I was 13 teaching first and second grade Sunday school every Sunday morning.
Totally unsupervised too.
Completely, yeah. Yeah. Sometimes someone would come and peek in and be like, "What? You're in here by yourself?" I'm like, "Yeah." They'd leave. But yeah, so super involved in church all throughout our teenage years.
Super involved. But the teenage years for me, there was a key change in my life. Well, I was deeply influenced by my father as a preacher and seeing him study the word. And as a teenager, I began to study the Bible for myself as well. And my dad had all these, lexicons and dictionaries and all these things about the Bible. And I would read those and I would study passages and take notes. And I still have my Bible. It's all marked up and I was linking things together. So for me, it was a time when the Bible kind of took on life to me. It wasn't just something people taught me in church or school, but it was something I studied for myself and grew to love. And I began teaching Bible. I'd go to Bible studies, teach Bible studies. So it was a really key time for me to really figure out that I have a passion, a desire to understand the Bible in a way deeper than, your average person that would just let someone else tell them what it meant. I wanted to know what it meant, and I wanted to tell people what it meant.
You wanted to teach it. I had no idea that you wanted to be a pastor as a youth.
Yeah. That was something I had a strong desire for.
Yeah, since I got saved when I was 6, I read the Bible every night. And by the time I was a teenager, I read the Bible through many times, especially certain books I would read over and over. Psalms I'd read over and over. I mean, I read the Bible every night by myself through my whole teenage years. So yeah, I had no idea you wanted to be a preacher.
Yeah, I mean, it was deeply moving to me. It was something that I had a deep love for. And I don't know, I guess it's because I truly took the message and I truly believed it. If you truly believe people are going to hell for eternity unless they believe, if you truly believe in the message of Jesus and the message of the Apostle Paul,
which no one truly does. If we really did, you'd be banging on people's doors till you're faint.
We wouldn't be playing basketball,
No.
We wouldn't be be watching TV or football or whatever things we did for fun. There would be no fun. There's no fun when there's heaven and hell on the line for eternity.
Right.
And Jesus is coming back and the rapture is going to happen at any moment. We're going to be raptured. There's all these videos on social media right now about the rapture that never happened 2 months ago. That we grew up in that. We watched those. I don't know if you remember the Thief in the Night movies, and as an elementary, it was all about the rapture. So there's nothing else in life that matters. And so, I didn't 100% believe that because I played basketball and I had fun and I had birthday parties and stuff like that. But I believed it enough that I wasn't happy just going to church and having someone tell me about the stories in the Bible. I wanted to understand it and I wanted to teach it and I wanted to make a difference. So that was my teenage years. And what grew out of that was a deep interest in a topic that was called apologetics, which was basically the study of the study of the defense of your faith. In other words, looking at the evidence for why we believe in God. We don't just believe it because the Bible says so, though a lot of Christians will tell you that. We believe it because, there's scientific evidence for it.
It's defendable.
We believe that it's defendable. It's a defense of your faith. We believe the Bible is God's word because A, B, and C.
Yeah.
The evidence that Jesus Christ died and rose again is this and that. All of those types of things, independent of the Bible. There's the Bible is God's word, but we needed an independent validation in a way. Not everyone needs that, but I wanted that.
Right.
And so I got really sucked into apologetics. And that was where my journey that led me into early adulthood kind of set me up for ultimately my deconversion. Apologetics is not the study of a topic and learning a topic and increasing the knowledge of that topic. Apologetics is winning the argument for why you believe in God.
Correct.
That's what it is. There is actually no scholarship to it. There is no substance to it. And as I got into that, into my 20s, my mid-20s, that's when it all broke down for me, because I realized, it's not real scholarship. It's not true studying to gain truth and to gain knowledge. It's studying to support the truth you already believe in.
Yes. Apologetics starts with belief. And belief is when you've got your arms wrapped around something and it's right in front of your face. So it's something that you're already, you could say, another way to say it is like you're already inside of it. And you have this belief. Now, how do I defend this belief that I'm holding on to? So let's back up a little bit. I want to talk about our high school experience, particularly, one, our preparation for the real world, and two, along with that, for example, our science teacher who was preparing us for university, preparing us for the world.
Well, we should clarify. Our science teacher was an associate pastor, probably second in command in our church. He wasn't a scientist, or he wasn't a true science educator. He was a pastor with an agenda.
Yeah.
A biblical agenda.
And he did have credentials.
He has a PhD in microbiology,
which I think is all very interesting part of the story, which happens to be the same direction that you went, right? Not directly, but
I mean, I started in microbiology, but I actually got my PhD in molecular genetics.
I did not know that. There's going to be a lot of time for all that too. So bring us back to biology class, physics class, chemistry class. My experience was, which I didn't get very far in his classes because I'm not that smart in science, but he would read, what was the magazine that he would get? Science Today or something?
The Scientist.
The Scientist. And he was obsessed with sharing the times that scientists admitted that they made a mistake, or when they didn't know something. He would say, look at this. They just said, they've been saying this and that and finally, this one scientist has said, turns out it wasn't that, it's this. And we would laugh and scoff at it. And later I recognized, well, that's what science does. It recognizes when it makes mistakes. And it says, look.
That's one of the key differences between science and faith, is it's constantly being revised and reformed and improved. Whereas religion, your religious beliefs, there's nothing to it. It's if we went to our old church tomorrow, or I guess next week, I'm sure we would hear a sermon and we'd be like, oh yeah, we heard that 25 years ago. There's no new knowledge that came over the last 25 years. It's the same thing.
That's so true.
Whereas science, new knowledge every year.
I know I'm jumping ahead, but my last many years in church was like, I can't hear the same thing. How many times can I hear the same thing over and over and repackaged? I can't, I'm going to go insane. All right, let me ask you this. Were you prepared to get out of high school, which meant you're 18, you've graduated high school, you no longer have that 50-hour requirement, right? Were you prepared for the world?
No, I was not prepared for the world. And in fact, I went to college and I lived at home with my parents. I didn't want to live in a dorm because that's where atheistic kids,
drunkards,
college students would be, drunkards, partiers. So I lived at home, and I only associated with my fellow church members that were also in college. And we had a little campus ministry group that basically hung out together exclusively. So I had a hard time integrating socially at the college scene. And it was a tough, actually it took 3 years, until I was a senior before I began to learn how to interact with people that I didn't go to church with. So I wasn't prepared. Yeah.
Tell me about the science classes that we were in.
In high school, you mean? Yeah. Well, the key things I want to bring up are, and it's because of, my personal journey in my mid-20s and beyond focused on this particular topic, and that is, the science behind evolution. And so one of the things, you'll probably remember this, that we were constantly raised on was this idea that evolution is, one, based off of circular reasoning. Like, for example, they use fossils to date how old the different layers are, and then they use the date of the layers to say that the fossils are a certain age. And so it was circular reasoning, and so it's bad science. And then the other thing that we often were told is that, scientists were, because they despise God, they hate God, and they don't want to be accountable for their sin, that they came up with an explanation for life that is God-free or doesn't rely on God being a creator. Get rid of God. And that is, and so scientists, being motivated out of their hatred for God and their unwillingness to be accountable to Him, came up with evolution. And both of those 2 points that was pushed at us, neither one of those resonated with me at all, because I would think, and I think most people recognize this, science brought us computers and cars and airplanes and open heart surgeries and eventually the internet and electric guitars and all this cool stuff, right? Like, how would they be so dumb that they would fall for circular reasoning about evolution?
They would say those, cars and guitars and microscopes are physical, testable things, yet we can't talk about things that we weren't there to observe. So we should probably trust God's word, because God's word explains where it all came from.
And and that's a topic, man, I hope we can get into, not today, obviously, but in the future, this idea of what's the observable nature of science and the inability to observe, species evolving over millions of years. That will be a fun one to get into.
Absolutely, we're going to get into that.
But for today, the thing that I want to really get at is I just didn't buy that scientists who were so intelligent that they came up with all these other things were dumb enough to use circular reasoning and think that is a valid science. I just could not buy that. Even as a teenager that was immersed in the world that we grew up in, I still didn't think that was a strong enough answer or critique. And then the other one being that, scientists despise God and they don't want to be accountable to God, so they've explained away God, the need for God. I never could buy that as an argument either. And that's because if I know that there's a God and I know that my sin is going to send me to hell, why in the world would I try to come up with an explanation for why God doesn't exist? Knowing that He's going to send me to hell, that didn't make any sense to me. You can't despise something
you just want
that you don't believe in.
They just want to sin. They want to keep being able to sin.
But how does that solve anything? It's I know if I jump off this cliff, I'm going to die. Right.
It's like a conspiracy.
I'm just going to explain away gravity. And
it's like why are they all a part of this conspiracy? It makes no sense.
And that's I didn't pick up on that until later in life. But so I just never bought the argument that they're just truly immoral and they want to get rid of God. But at the same time, I believed 100% that the creation story in the Bible was true. I believed evolution was false. I had no doubt about it. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I was getting into apologetics. Perhaps my favorite topic, or my favorite 2 topics, were the evidence for the existence of God and the evidence for God's creation in a 6-day period, as described in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, that happened roughly 6,000, 7,000 years ago. Those were my 2 favorite topics. And so going into college and beyond, my life's direction was guided by that interest, and that is the apologetics behind God's existence and creation.
Yeah. And you knew a lot of arguments for each of those, and you continued developing those into your 20s as you got further and further into just the development of being a human. I mean, you're in your 20s now, you've got different experiences happening, you're living in different places. So you graduated from the University of Arkansas. Let's kind of get into our 20s.
Yeah, so I finished college. I was, at the time, I was reading creation science books, books on intelligent design. And a lot of the things they would talk about is, well, the fossil record is full of the missing links are still missing. A. B, there's no geological column. And C was this concept of irreducible complexity, which was proposed by this author, Michael Behe, who was also a biochemist, in his book, Darwin's Black Box. This was one that I really, really soaked up. And this was this idea that, our cells are full of little machines, little microscopic or nanoscopic machines that perform specific functions. And these machines are made up of proteins that do specific things. And if you take away one part of the machine, it's no longer functional. So in order for it to have evolved, it would have to simultaneously, each part of the machine would have to have evolved at the same time. Otherwise, it's useless and could not be selected for. It's kind of like, think about a car. A car is useless if it doesn't have an engine. It's also useless if it has all the wheels and tires, but it doesn't have like an axle. So you need the entire thing for it to work. And so that, there's no way you could evolve a car. It either is there or it's not. It's either functional or it's not. And likewise, our cells are full of machines. Of course, I was a biochemistry major in college, and so I soaked that up because I knew about these machines. I knew about all the things that worked in the cell and how the cell worked, so that was really great. And then the final thing, D, would have been this idea of information theory, where our DNA encodes information that for it to evolve would take the odds of it evolving and getting the right sequence are like one in some astronomical number. Like the number of atoms in the universe, guessing the right atom in the universe would be easier to do. Some random atom, just pick one and guess the one that I'm thinking of in this moment, would be easier to do than to evolve all the genetic information to encode like a handful of proteins. I love that example as well.
Done. So not possible.
Yeah, not possible. Impossible. It's easier to guess which atom I'm thinking of.
And you're looking around at these PhD people and your teachers and et cetera, going like, if they only knew. If
they thought about it. Like they understand that our cells are full of these machines. They understand the information in our DNA. If they only thought about it a little further about, well, how did it get here? They would see it's impossible. So I was reading these books, I was soaking it up, and I wanted to understand genetics to the degree that I could explain and show that there's no way we evolved from a common ancestor as, say, chimpanzees. Like genetically, there's the evidence points against it. That's what I wanted to show. And so I decided to get a PhD, and
for the purpose of defending your faith, defending young earth science, creation science.
Exactly.
And you could have been, Josh, you realize you could have been a big fish in that little pond, and everyone could have been looking to you for guidance.
I mean, I won't lie, like a part of me wanted that admiration from others, I wanted to be recognized as this expert. I wanted to be the one that's giving the seminars and the lectures and the debates and winning the argument, and influencing people for Christ. So there was some pride.
Did you ever challenge people during that time, or kind of debate people, or challenge any of your teachers or anything? Or did you mostly keep pretty quiet in the world?
I didn't debate teachers. I obviously wouldn't bring it up in class because I didn't want to disrupt class. I did have little debates here and there with some people that I interacted with, but typically they were people that I felt comfortable around. I never tried to set up debates, formal debates. I was a little insecure to go that far, but my goal was to get to that point. And so I knew I needed, a PhD, I needed advanced training. And so this begins kind of the the actual start of my journey that led me to leave my faith or lose my faith. Like, so the first key step was, well, I had to move away from the church. I had to move to another university, to another city in another state. I moved 700 miles away and ended up at Ohio State University to get my PhD. And by the way, I had to get permission from our pastor to go. Like, I had to ask him and say, hey, I want to do this, and here's the reasons why I want to do it. And I had to get his permission, which is kind of crazy to believe, to think about, but that's what I had to do. And so that was the moment when I left kind of the security of the bubble of the church.
And you're how old? 25?
25.
You had already gotten your master's.
Yeah, I had a master's, but it wasn't in like a genetics. It was a master's in food science. And so, yeah, I left and I was on my own. And of course, I would do my studies for my PhD during the day. I'd go to the lab and do experiments. But every night I'd go home and I would read books on creation science, on intelligent design.
You maybe read more books than, most any Christian ever. Honestly, right?
I read these books every night. I had my computer out. I was building a PowerPoint for why evolution was, like, I was convinced evolution was collapsing. Like, these books, when you read these books, they describe it as like a theory in crisis, a theory that's like falling apart. Like, scientists are giving up on it. Like, the new genetic evidence and the cellular evidence is too great for evolution to explain. Like, I believed it was falling apart, and I was going to be a part of the fight to bring it down.
Yeah,
like that's what those books make you think. And I see that today. Like when I read people's comments about a social media post, and it's clear that they think that evolution is collapsing, which is quite the opposite. Like the sciences more than ever are supporting the theory of evolution. But yeah, so I would read those, and I did that for a couple years. And I finally got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm ready to read my first book on evolution by an evolutionist, you could say, or by just a scientist,
Right.
I'm ready to read my first book that's not creation science motivated. And I picked this book called The Making of the Fittest by Sean Carroll. And I picked that book because when I was applying for grad schools, when I was interviewing for grad schools, I went to Duke University. I interviewed in their department. And during my interview, one of the professors, he didn't even bother to interview me about grad school. He basically pulled this book off his shelf. He said, this book's called The Making of the Fittest. It's the genetic evidence for evolution. You should give it a read sometime. And it was the weirdest interaction that I had. Like, you would interview 10 professors in one day straight for these grad school interview. And this particular one, he just told me to read this book. And he probably looked me up. Like, he was probably searching my background and saw that I taught at this school that was the school we grew up in. I was a volunteer teacher for a year. I taught biology, and he probably saw that I was coming from this world where we believed in biblical creationism. And so he just said, read this book, which...
Wow.
So that's the book I picked. I was like, well, this is the one this guy...
Was that the turning point for you? Was that just the very first turning point?
That was the start. I read the first 3 chapters of that book, and then I put it away. I said, I don't want to read this anymore. I put it away for half a year.
Wow.
And I went back and read my creation books.
Wow. Isn't that wild?
But it was there. Yeah, but that book was there, and it was always tempting me. It was always, you could say, it was always kind of teasing me or haunting me. Like I couldn't get it out of my head because I actually thought it was pretty good. And then I went back and I read the full book 6 months later, and I was blown away by the brilliance, by the elegance, by the science behind, at that point, just the genetic evidence for evolution. And I was hooked. I went, after I finished that book, I went to the library and I went to the biology sections and I found other books. I found one called Only a Theory, and I bought that book by Kenneth Miller. And then his other book, Finding Darwin's God, and then a book by Richard Dawkins, Evolution, the Greatest Show on Earth, and then Coyne wrote Why Evolution is True. I read so many books, and I have a bookshelf here full of these books.
How were you feeling during this time? How were you, like, did it excite you?
Like, reading the science of evolution was perhaps the most satisfying thing of my life up until that point.
Yeah.
It was just so fulfilling to get these explanations that I was, we were shielded from growing up.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Our parents didn't have a clue about this stuff. Like,
No.
even our pastors didn't know any of this science.
No, they were educated by our science teacher in high school, the associate pastor.
Yeah. Basically, they were shielding us from something they knew nothing of, And so for me, there was two levels, though. The other side of it was, wait a second, this changes everything. I love the science, but it's directly at odds with everything I was raised to believe.
Your whole world, your social groups, your family, your whole life.
Yeah, and it was at odds. It was at my whole life, yeah. And it was at odds with this very reason I went to grad school, which was to show genetically we didn't evolve.
It challenged your purpose.
Yeah, it challenged my purpose. It challenged the view of the world that I had, everything. And so it was extremely stressful. It was a struggle, like trying to figure out what this meant for me and what I would do with this information.
Yeah.
But, the truth was the most important thing to me, I think.
Yes.
I hope. And I just remember one day, at one point I was like, you know what? I don't deny evolution anymore. In fact, I don't believe that we were created the way it's described in the Bible, or at least the way we were taught.
How old were you when you accepted that?
I was 28, 29 years old, somewhere around there.
So you're still a Christian at that point?
So I still went to church for a bit, but I got nothing out of church at that point. Because I would go to church, and then the pastor, I remember one of the pastors of the church I went to, he said, evolution is like, imagine you're in an airplane full of wood and nails and pipes and siding and paint, and the door of the plane opens and all this material falls out of the plane and it falls to the ground, and as it hits the ground, it arranges itself into a house. And that's what evolution is, just a bunch of random stuff going on to form a cell and to form life. And I was like, no, that's not what evolution is saying. And
right. And
I would just get frustrated at church with the preachers and the way they described evolution, for one. And so for me, the thought that these preachers actually knew anything started to fall apart for me, because I realized they had no clue what they were talking about with evolution or with science. So I thought, what else do they have no clue about?
Right.
Do they have any understanding of the Bible at all? Where it came from? Do they have any understanding of other cultures and other religions? Do they have any understanding of
spirituality?
Spirituality.
What's real?
Yeah. Are they actually men that are led by God to teach us truth?
Right.
This guy just said a bunch of nonsense from the pulpit. He's not being led by God right now. What else is he saying that's not of God? And so that was pretty much the beginning of the end for me. It wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the end for me.
Yeah. And you're how old at this? Right. Oh, 28, 29.
Yeah, 28, 29, somewhere around there. And yeah, so that's, if you want to say, what's your testimony? That's my testimony. That's my moment of desalvation, you could say, the loss of my faith. There was no recovering it. It was when I woke up. And it's once you walk out of the darkness that you've been raised in, and once you see life, once you see light and truth, there's no undoing it. As much as it was, as hard as it was to go through that, and as hard as it was to tell my parents I don't want to be members of the church anymore, to be voted out for the church, to have my childhood best friend, him very well, to talk with me and tell me that I'm wrong. As hard as it was to go through all that, there was no other option. There was no going back.
Right.
You just cannot.
You can't go back.
You cannot go back.
You can't go back. You can't.
Yeah.
So that's your 20s. Let me maybe just talk a little bit about my 20s.
Yeah.
When I was 21, I ended up at out of community college and at the university where I was studying psychology. So my background is different than yours. Mine is in psychology, kind of philosophy. I think the first semester I took a class called Animal Behavior is what it was called, but it was basically evolutionary biology. From the first day of that class, I was absolutely hooked. I was absolutely drawn into evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology. So like, and at the same time, from the same professor, he was teaching experimental psychology. So that's looking at cause and effect and how to analyze data and analyze experiments to know, like, to pick it apart and be like, okay, well, is this, did this really cause this effect? And can I analyze, okay, how did they go about setting up the experiment? Can I poke holes in the experiment? Can I poke holes in the theory? And poking holes in the design. And so while I'm learning about how to analyze the data and recognize human error, which includes myself, I'm also taking this class and applying what I'm learning from experimental psychology to my basically evolutionary biology class. And man, I was so drawn in. And I recognized so early that it's not bullshit. It's
like, how old are you? This is your 20s?
21.
Early 20s?
21.
21, okay.
Just married and going to like university for the first time. I had finished, like community college. It was that was my turning point. So then I'm living my 20s with this kind of contradiction in my mind. And this understanding that, okay, well, they were wrong about where we came from. They were wrong about Genesis, but there's plenty of Christians that believe in evolution and they find a way to make it work in their mind. So I just went on like that. Like, what other option did I have at that point? Like, I was raised in the world of fundamentalism. So like, it's not easy to. Your whole social world is involved in that and intertwined in that. But through my 20s, I continued to study science. I loved anthropology, paleontology. So it's just studying, like, my defense was could I defend my new understanding? So I want to understand it. I deeply want to understand it. Can I find holes in it? In it itself, but like you said, there's no going back once you start learning.
Well, I think we were starving for substance, like the way you describe the classes, and like it's the stuff that goes into actual learning, actual discovery, actual truth, like advancing our knowledge, getting deeper and really figuring out how the world works. Like, that's what that was for you. Whereas our whole life, we were told, this is how it works, and this is what you have to believe. And then apologetics. Yeah. And this is the evidence for it. And it was all smoke and mirrors. There was no substance to it. And for the first time in your life, you're getting something that's solid.
Yes.
That has, that's the foundation of it is based off of like thinking and testing and refining these ideas, leading you to a closer and closer to the truth, where we never had that. But we were told we had that, and we thought we had that, but we didn't. And so to get that for the first time in your psychology classes was, you were hooked. Like the word you use, hooked. Like that's the same thing I felt for the first time. To
it's
have
like, this
something
is real. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, jinx. No, that you nailed it on the head, man. It was like you said, what we knew was just so, not only did we understand it very deeply, because deep understanding of Christianity, I guess, was a huge part of our upbringing. Like, know what you know, and be able to defend it, right? So we knew it. Like the whole world of it was just right there in our hand. We could turn it and look at it and defend it in any way. I mean, I still could if I wanted to.
I mean, we should at some point get into some of those things we were taught, because I think it's interesting. Like,
absolutely,
the doctrine, the concepts, you know, as we were
absolutely
told they were, you know, as they were described to us. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I was at, my parents recently, and some other people were there, and there's, do you have the concepts study? So, my mom's getting it out. She's got a folder, folders and folders and booklets and notes after notes, like 6 inches deep of the concepts. and we won't get into too much of what the concepts are, but they're basically the fundamentals of Christianity, really developing a theory around it. But anyway, we get to college and they're like, check this out. Like, here's information. Here's observation of the world. It's fascinating. Yeah. It's amazing.
In some ways we were kind of set up, like the whole concepts that we grew up with. By the way, they were basically, our pastor was previously some kind of electrical engineer, I think, by training. Like he had a bit of an engineer's approach to explaining the Bible and connecting verses and kind of bringing it to life in a way that was effective. Like, it kind of drew people in, I would say. I mean, after a while it gets old, but what I'm getting at is it fed the rational, logical part of the brain, because, well, he was an engineer. He saw things a certain way and could explain it in a certain way. And so we had that. We wanted that. But ours was all based off of random verses in a Bible. And for the first time, you got fed a similar type of
approach,
similar type of way of thinking, but it was all about the natural world and real science behind it and methods to understand it. And so they kind of set us up to like be craving this kind of information, and you got it, and you got the real stuff, and it was altering for you, for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, that was my 20s. I really did get into science and psychology in a deeper way, more just in the interest that I wanted to pursue. But I learned not to be afraid of information, because we were afraid of information as youngsters, entertains. We were afraid. We were told not to consume information outside of what they were feeding us.
That always bothered me. I remember in college at the bookstore finding a book on the metaphysics of God or something by one of the professors at the university, and I bought it, and I thought, there's probably a lot of weird stuff in here, but maybe there's something we can learn and we can use to strengthen our own faith. Because I just wanted to know new things. I wanted to use new arguments that were new, and I took it to church and I showed it to the pastor, the assistant pastor, who was also our principal at the school.
The other one.
And he looked at it and he said, looks like a bunch of malarkey or baloney or something, like humanist baloney. And then he just dismissed it. And that really bothered me. I just thought, why don't you want to not that we need this guy to tell us how to think and live, but he's getting at a little bit of science leading to metaphysics, leading to spiritual. There's got to be something interesting and useful in here that we can build off of and use to support our faith. And this guy, this preacher, didn't even want to bother with it. We have everything we need here already.
It's not in the Word of we've got the Word of God already. Anything else is a distraction,
a tool of Satan.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about maybe into your 30s? I mean, I know that we both had to struggle with the social ramifications of leaving faith.
Yeah.
You've told your parents, that you don't have the same belief as you used to. You don't go to church anymore when you visit, right? You haven't been in 15 years?
Yeah, I don't. They always ask me to go, and I always say, no, I'm not interested. The last time I was home, my mom kind of guilted me into, or she tried to guilt me into feeling bad about rejecting everything,
That's
which
so
they
hard.
do occasionally. Yeah.
That's so hard. you don't want to hurt your parents. I mean, you look up to your parents. You love your parents.
I don't want to hurt my parents. And like I said at the very beginning, like from the earliest of my childhood, like one of my key desires in life was to make my parents proud. And so for them to say things like that, like it really, it hurts. And I don't know, I can't really say what I think to them. I mean, they know I don't believe it, but I can't say it the way I feel it. But deep down, all I want to just say is, hey, do you want me to believe it because you told me to believe it? Or do you want me to believe it because I find it believable?
They just want you to believe it. They just want you to believe it.
Yeah.
Like, why would you not believe? And like you said, you can't go back. Like, I don't want to not have faith. I don't want to not have this awkwardness between us. I don't want to hurt your feelings. But what am I supposed to do about it? There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not welcome at church. You're actually not welcome at church. But they say, of course you are. We just want you back. Of course you're welcome at church. You realize if you walked in that church, they would be so happy to see you. Just so happy, right?
A lot of the people there would be happy for sure. There's a lot of good people in the church. And if I went, they would just give me a hug and ask me how I'm doing and what I'm doing. They would sincerely, enjoy that experience. But the last time I was there, like the pastor came up to me and he kind of sized me up. He viewed me as a threat.
Exactly.
And
to his flock.
I definitely felt, yes, and I definitely felt it. And he was sizing me up to see whether or not how much of a threat I am. Of course, I'm not a threat. I don't want to change anyone. I'm not going to change any of those people.
Right.
And it's remarkable that we changed. And that's something to think about. Like, why do some people change and others can't change?
Can't. That's correct. Not that they won't change. They literally can't change. And that's a symptom of boomeritis. Boomers. They just can't.
They can't change the same way that we can't go back. It's an impossibility.
Right. We all want to be born, reborn and brought from darkness to light, And for them, that was adopting a Christian a particular Christian worldview, right? And it was great for them. And for us, it just means something different. It just looks different. I mean, imagine, Josh, like you're not even going to be, it seems so terrible to even talk about, but like when you realize that it's not true, these kind of conversations can sound so sacrilegious or hurtful, right? But that's not our point. I mean, to them, you're not going to be with them one day in heaven.
Honestly, I don't know what they think.
All those types of things.
I think they probably think that, and they almost have to. Like, you can't, when you're a human on this planet and you love your kids, like you can't have the thought that they're going to be in hell someday. You can't live with that thought.
That's another thing we'll get into in the podcast.
Yeah. That's a big one. But I think they think, well, when he was 5 or when he was 11, he said the prayer, he was saved. And of course, as Baptists, we believed once saved, always saved.
Right.
Even if you walk away, even if you stop believing, you were born again. You can't be unborn.
Which means you actually still believe, in some sense you must certainly.
Yeah. There's a chance I'll return. Like I am a child of God in their mind, and I will be in heaven someday. I won't be rewarded like they are because I walked away and I wasn't faithful to the end. So I'll lose rewards in heaven, but I'll be there. And
You'll be in.
And I'll get to experience the joy and peace of heaven. And that's how they accept it. Yeah, go ahead.
The reason I say we're not welcome, though they would say, of course we are welcome, is I recognize that I'm not welcome because I don't believe the same things they do. And a group only works when there's camaraderie and agreement. And like you said, when you went, you were sized up because you were a wolf. You're a wolf. What's a wolf doing with my sheep? Yeah. And that's how they feel. Like, I can't go because I don't believe what you believe. And so what am I supposed to do when you say things that I know are just like not correct, which is basically everything from inside your worldview that you're going to say. What am I supposed to do about it? I still love the people in the room. I still want to have a relationship with these people, but I can't. I mean, I'm going to bring disunity.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to open my mouth. I'm not going to be able to pray for, open in prayer or lead worship or whatever it is that I used to do. Like, we didn't get into this, but I continued being basically a worship pastor through my 30s till I was 37. That's part of my testimony too. Until one day I cannot do this anymore. When I was at church leading worship, I felt honest about it. I never was dishonest. I never was faking anything. I had all this other knowledge and explorations of philosophy and things like that we really didn't get into, which I continued to study through my 30s. At some point, it was like, these worlds just can't exist anymore, and I can't be here anymore, or I'm going to go insane.
I think for you, it was harder because you still lived in the hometown we grew up in. You're still
Right.
around these people.
Right.
It was easier for me because I was, across the United States living on my own.
Right.
Like, it was a lot easier for me to be
It's
free
quieter.
of it.
It's a lot quieter.
But I wasn't totally free of it. Like, it took me a while to tell my parents I wasn't believing anymore. It took me a while to tell the pastor I wasn't coming back, and then they voted me out after that. Like, it took me a while to be free of it. But I remember when the pastor finally said, well, we're going to vote you out. When he finally told me that over the phone, I don't even live in the town anymore. Like, I haven't been, it's been like 5 years since I've been to church. I hadn't been a believer in so long, but it took several years for that conversation to finally happen. And I remember when we hung up, the relief I felt to finally be free of it, because I knew he would never try to call me again. I knew he would never try to get me to explain why I don't want to be there and what happened, and it was just a relief. And so I'm guessing for you, it's like it was hard for you to get out of it, because you're still there, your family's there, your friends
Absolutely.
are there.
I'm a pastor.
You're the
I'm a worship pastor.
leader.
I'm on stage giving. That was a big thing. Like, man, people look to you for spiritual validation. They have desperate eyes when they look at you. When you're speaking, every single Sunday, I would give a some sort of spiritual message, whether it was for 1 minute, one little passage and one little sentence. Maybe I would go on for 5 or 10 minutes sometimes. Every Sunday, I'm feeding people from within their worldview. There's only so much you can say, or so long you can give these more broad topics and things for them to feed them, knowing that man, I just can't do this anymore. And I can't be the one that's feeding you when I don't even know if it's true. You're looking to me to feed you spiritual guidance. And I'm basically on the cusp of not believing this whatsoever. Yet I'm required from my job, to continue doing this every Sunday. Every Sunday comes up, here you are. You better feed me something.
I can't imagine.
And I was just empty by that point. I had nothing left to give. There's nothing left to give. I'm 37 years old. I've been giving and giving and giving. Yeah, it was hard. And a lot of people look to me, and a lot of people wonder what's going on with him. Why isn't he, at first I called it a sabbatical. It's like, hey, I'm on sabbatical. I've been on stage since I was 13 with you, and I'm on sabbatical. Well, now it's going on 4 years in February, and I haven't gone to church, and I don't want to. Every Sunday comes, I'm so happy, man. Sundays are amazing.
Yeah.
They're the best. Sundays are like a gift.
Absolutely. The last year of church for me, I would be driving to church and I would see somebody out at the park running or riding their bike, and envied them. Like I wanted a Sunday to just live, you know?
Yeah. I have more empathy and understanding for people at church though too. It's like it's such a hard dynamic, man. Because it sounds like we're complaining or like we think we're so right and they're so wrong. It's like we're all just humans, like trying to get through this life in some form or fashion, like doing the right thing, or and then like there's so many broadly good things that happen in church, and the social aspect of it, and like helping people. Like my dad passed away three months ago or so, and for the first time I was on the receiving end of the church's kindness and goodness through a trial, through a difficult situation. And it's like, this is really beautiful. Like, you provide a venue, you provide people that just love on you and like want to do tasks for you and chores for you and give you food, and like it's really beautiful. So, and people that we love, are still in it. And it's like, what do you say to that? It's good. It's wonderful. Like I don't have any problem with it. This is my problem, and this is what we'll talk about more. I only have one problem. It's not true. Everything else is like, do what you want with it. Like it could be great, it could be manipulative, it could be all kinds of gross things and positive things, but like not true. So what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. I got nothing to add to that, man.
Right.
Yeah. It's not true.
And so with that, we'll think about kind of ending this first podcast. And you, Josh, by the way, we haven't said our names. Josh, you're a PhD, master's level in food science. You are a scientist. You are in the scope, doing science in the lab every day. You're 42, 3?
43, just
43.
like a week or two ago. Yeah, last week turned 43.
Okay, happy birthday.
Yeah, I'm a professor at School of Medicine. I have a research lab. I live and breathe science. It's my life.
Yeah, and behind the scenes, I have a degree in psychology, and I've been studying really philosophy and the ideas of the world for literally a couple hours a day for the last 20 years, since I was 21, 20 years ago. And I had my first, evolutionary psychology class. I've been just studying like, okay, well, if they're wrong about this, well, I'm on a search to find the answer. I can find the answer. I'm smart, and I've been searching far and wide, left and right, in and out of cultures and ideas from the world since then. And so this podcast is going to be about science. It's going to be about psychology, philosophy, religion, and the merging and the interplay between all those worlds.
Yeah, and we'll basically discuss the ideas that we've come across, and
right,
they're not ours.
And you're right, these aren't our ideas. And yeah, it's just going to be nice to be able to flesh these out and just like say them out loud, which we haven't really been able to do,